While the golden age of Hollywood took place between the 1910s and 1960s, reshaping Hollywood and filmmaking with the introduction of technicolor and sound in iconic films like 1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it is the 80s and 90s that brought the most memorable performances. Today, we're breaking down the 7 levels of acting performance from the 80s and 90s from trash tier to GOAT tier. Let's jump right into it. Level 1, trash, Anna Nicole Smith as Carrie Whisk in Skyscraper. Anna Nicole Smith starred in the 1996 action film Skyscraper. Seemingly the Playboy Playmate of the Year, Smith was cast for 2 reasons, and neither of which were her acting abilities. The filmmakers knew their audience and gave them what they wanted. Therefore, we have multiple scenes featuring Smith's talents on full display. Her acting is more bland than a stale bread left in the fridge for weeks, as she mostly reads lines from cue cards in a helicopter. I really think starring Anna Nicole Smith would have been a better title for the movie than Skyscraper, because viewers knew exactly what they were heading in for. But our next feature puts even the woes of Skyscraper to shame. Trisha O'Neill as Ann Kimbrough in Piranha 2. 1982's Piranha 2. Flying Killers, The Spawning is a piece of garbage that breaks all the laws of common sense with James Cameron at the helm, the man behind blockbusters like Avatar, Titanic, and the Terminator franchise. It's mind-boggling to me how Piranha 2 and the Terminator have a difference of only 2 years. The premise behind the film was atrocious, as the Italian producer on the film, Ovidio G. Asinides, had a fight with Cameron over the editing, which eventually led to him being kicked off the film during the editing process. Therefore, Cameron doesn't consider the final product to be his creation. Trisha O'Neill delivers a dry performance just like the rest of the cast, and the result is a hilariously bad creature feature where flying piranhas attack a resort hotel, featuring obscenity that a perverted 14-year-old would dream of. The editing is so bad that the movie forgets basic consistency, as the movie transitions into night only to cut to a scene in the bright sun, back to the dead of night, then back to dusk. Demi Moore as Erin Grant in Striptease. And then we have 1996's Striptease, which on paper was a success with over $100 million earnings worldwide. A film with a stellar cast consisting of Demi Moore at the peak of her 90s stardom. A film based on a best-selling novel. But the final product? A big confusion. Most people I've spoken to don't have a clue what this film wants to be. A satire? A neo-noir crime story? A heartfelt drama about a mother fighting for her daughter's custody? Striptease tries to be the jack of all trades and crashes phenomenally. Burt Reynolds' sleazy, perverted congressman covered in cheap spray tan and Vaseline can't be taken seriously as he humps everything. Moore's Erin Grant is supposed to be a woman taking control, but she can't stop shaking her assets as if she were in a voyeuristic late-night cable movie. The trash tier is where performances barely qualify as performances at all. They're stiff, lifeless, and almost accidental in their comedy. But not all the performances from the glorious times of the 80s and 90s were trash, some were slightly better. Level 2. Bad tier. Elizabeth Berkley as Nomi Malone in Showgirls. You know a performance is bad when it is remembered more for other aspects than the acting. In this case, the immense sexualization of everything Elizabeth Berkley encounters in 1995's Showgirls. Everyone in this movie is pissed off all the time. Even the sex is angry. Paul Verhoeven's directorial career in the US was killed off by Showgirls, as he became known for 3 things: excessive violence, excessive nudity, and over-the-top campiness. Madonna as Rebecca Carlson in Body of Evidence. Another dishonorable, try-hard performance worthy of mid-trash status is Madonna in 1993's Body of Evidence, a film that tries too hard to imitate the tanginess of Basic Instinct, but succumbs even harder due to the blandness of Madonna's acting. It's no surprise that the film flopped at the box office with $38 million in earnings against a $30 million budget plus marketing costs. The script is so bad that even a talented actor like Willem Dafoe overacts. Frank Delaney, a defense lawyer, engages in sex with his client, Rebecca Carlson, who's defending herself against killing her husband. Many on Reddit have called Body of Evidence a Timu version of Basic Instinct, and I couldn't agree more, as Madonna's on-screen charisma with Dafoe is wooden. Audiences criticized Madonna of cashing in on her sex coffee table book and erotica album, hoping people would overload on Madonna trying to be sexually edgy yet again. The film is mostly remembered for its edgy, kinky content, like the scene in the parking garage on the car. Christopher Reeve as Superman Shaw Clark Kent in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Talking about massive disappointments, it doesn't get worse than 1987's Superman 4. The Quest for Peace, which not only threatened to end the Superman film series as we know it today, but also ousted the iconic Christopher Reeve, who marked his final appearance as Superman. The Quest for Peace was doomed from the start when the film's producer, the Cannon Group, went broke. There were major budget cuts and 45 minutes of footage were deleted after negative test screenings. Boring is putting it lightly, and don't get me started on the cheapest of CGI effects that seem to be made on MS Paint. The Quest for Peace crept to a flailing $36.7 million on the box office, which barely covered the laughable $17 million budget. The disaster led to Superman 5 getting scrapped, as fans got a Superman entry after 20 years with 2006's Superman Returns. Here, at least the actors are trying, but that's the problem. These performances are exaggerated and unintentionally comedic, but the bad tier actors hold their ground well and maintain relevance. Level 3, mid-tier, Jean-Claude Van Damme as Frank Dux in Bloodsport. 1988's Bloodsport, which, although was a considerable box office success grossing $50 million on a $2.3 million budget, didn't receive much critical acclaim as Jean-Claude Van Damme's lacked the emotional touch. His dialogue delivery was stiff and only limited to 3 states: polite smile, confused frown, and yelling in slow motion while seemingly reading his lines off a cue card. Elijah Wood as North in North. Another entry that tries too hard to jump on the Forrest Gump Oscar bait bandwagon is 1994's North. Directed by the legendary Rob Reiner and featuring Elijah Wood and Bruce Willis, North, played by a 13-year-old Wood, sets off on a world tour to find better parents than his neglectful ones back at home. What North really found was a massive hole in the wallet, as the film made only $12 million against a $50 million budget. Roger Ebert's review further deteriorated North when he said, "I hated this movie. Hated this movie." Not only was the film accused of being insensitive and racist with its portrayal of Texans as somewhat gluttonous cowboys and Africans living in grass huts, the humor was boring and forced and as stupid as you can imagine. It's a pity having such big names while spiraling below so badly. Harrison Ford as Dr. Richard Kimball in The Fugitive. The last entry in the mid-tier level will pull many eyebrows, but Harrison Ford's whisper shouting when angry with his clenched jaw is his staple, which works and is believable but far from anything transformative when he played Dr. Richard Kimball in 1993's The Fugitive. The film made $368.9 million against $44 million and earned 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, but Kimball doesn't have a complex arc, as his entire motivation from the first minute to the last is find the one-armed man. There's no moral conflict or contradictions. Tommy Lee Jones also delivers an Oscar-winning performance with his dry humor and sharpness. The supporting cast also does its job convincingly, but none explore emotion, trauma, guilt, grief. It's all about momentum with fast pacing and massive set pieces. The mid-tier can be said to be the serious zone, as this is where performances become competent but rarely memorable. Even though these performances carried weight, spoke clearly, and reacted convincingly enough, the work still feels mechanical, not inspired. But the next tier unclocks the skill of emotional acting. Level 4, good tier. Sandra Bullock as Annie in Speed. Sandra Bullock plays Annie in 1994's Speed, a random civilian on the bus with effortless relatability. Her nervous laughter and the way she talks fast when stressed feel real as day. Annie balances the film's terror and humor with her small comedic beats like fumbling the gear shift and muttering, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." And how can I forget to mention her chemistry with Keanu Reeves? Fun fact, she developed a crush on Reeves during filming, which Bullock reveals years later on The Ellen Show. With two greats in Bullock and Reeves at the bus helm, they safely steered everyone to safety and the studio to a fortune with $350.4 million in box office earnings against $37 million. Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels as Lloyd Christmas and Harry Dunn in Dumb and Dumber. Another reliable performance by two competent leads catapulted 1994's Dumb and Dumber to Comedy Hall of Fame with $247 million earnings against a $17 million budget. The film has since developed a cult following with a 2003 prequel and 2014 sequel, along with an animated TV series. While the movie looks stupid at a fleeting glance, the performances by Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels were no ordinary feats. They required impeccable micro-timing and full-body physicality. The high-precision clown acting scene with Lloyd's airport sprint, where Carrey does a heel kick and chest-out run, borders on cartoon physics, but Carrey's realism makes it physically believable. What I truly loved about their performances was ego death. The actors really embraced the film's rigid psychological code through childlike reasoning while being stupid in every sense of the word. Dumb and Dumber is not ranked higher because the emotional range is intentionally flat, which is not a bad thing, as the film does exactly what it's supposed to do. Saffron Burrows and LL Cool J as Dr. Susan McAllister and Preacher in Deep Blue Sea. Lastly, the straight-faced commitment in 1999's Deep Blue Sea makes it a digestible science fiction horror film. After Spielberg's 1975 thriller Jaws, which is the epitome of shark flicks, Deep Blue Sea earns the second best position with outstanding performances left, right, and center. When super intelligent sharks stalk scientists in a flooded underwater lab, the easy route would have been campy and perverted performances similar to the ones we saw in Piranha. But Saffron Burrows delivers lines about genetically modifying shark brains with clinical coldness, as if she's in a medical drama, not a creature feature. And LL Cool J is a solid emotional anchor with his confessional video to God, having genuine vulnerability as he balances humor with a believable sense of fear. Everyone brought professionalism to a movie that danced on a fine line of either being pure cheese or a box office success meant to be taken seriously. Deep Blue Sea is an iconic shark movie that almost everyone has seen. It made $165 million from an $82 million budget and inspired 2 sequels. The good tier features actors you can rely on. They deliver grounded performances that are consistent and emotionally believable. Basically, they know how to do their job. But doing the job in a manner fitting of a world-class actor is a skill known only by those in the great tier and above. Level 5. Great tier Bruce Willis as John McClane in Die Hard. Who can better start at this level than Bruce Willis in 1988's Die Hard? In the era of Schwarzenegger and Stallone, Bruce Willis broke the unstoppable and one-note stoic template by playing a regular man in McClane who deals with exhaustion and fear while being sarcastic. The vulnerability on display was revolutionary. In the bathroom monologue, McClane talks about how he failed Holly. That is real emotional work rather than muscle flexing.
Tell her that she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me.
His voice cracks before the tears and he swallows words mid-sentence to hold back emotion. John McClane set the bar for modern action protagonists to be human and vulnerable, and the likes of Jason Bourne and John Wick owe him a lot. Die Hard did $142 million at the box office against a $35 million budget and is widely considered one of the greatest action films of all time, as it started an entire Die Hard franchise with 4 sequels. Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman challenged Selina Kyle in Batman Returns. Next, we have Michelle Pfeiffer's dual-role portrayal in 1992's Batman Returns, where she plays 2 characters with opposite psychologies, with flawless precision. Selina Kyle with her shoulders rolled inwards and insecure delivery is day, and Catwoman with her straight spine, chest forward and slow, predatory walk with an unwavering eye contact is night. There was not a single moment of overlap or confusion between the two. She plays Catwoman with emotional layers while being theatrical. Pfeiffer lets subtle emotional cracks leak through. For instance, the rooftop kiss with Batman, where her voice almost breaks when Bruce touches her face. For a moment, Selina resurfaces, but then she snaps back into Catwoman with a fast exhale. She uses the feminine archetype not to play the sexy villainess, but as a weapon as she uses flirtation for deception rather than seduction, and changes her tone to make men underestimate her before attacking.
You poor guys, always confusing your pistols with your privates.
Batman Returns made $266.8 million against an $80 million budget and has since been reappraised as one of the strongest Batman films that gave the genre its dark and ambitious direction. Keanu Reeves as Johnny Utah in Point Break. Another performance involving immense difficulty to play is Johnny Utah in 1991's Point Break. Keanu Reeves gives one of the most controlled internal performances of his career, as Utah's role requires him to be confident but inexperienced and tough but naive. His posture shifts from upright FBI agent rigidity to fascination for Bodhi, played by Patrick Swayze. The film provides Shakespeare-level tragic pairing, as the Utah-Bodhi dynamic is one of the most layered displays in action cinema, with Reeves playing Utah as someone wanting Bodhi's approval even when he intellectually rejects the philosophy.
Yeah, it went bad. It went real bad. Life sure has a sick sense of humor, doesn't it?
Swayze plays Bodhi as someone who needs Utah to validate his worldview, even if it destroys them both. Breakpoint made $83.5 million against $24 million and was a success because it operates on a higher artistic frequency than nearly any action film of its era, with a psychologically layered villain and a spiritually vulnerable hero. These performances don't just act well. They reshape the identity of the film and carve their place amongst Hollywood's greatest, but they still lack the X factor needed to be the best of the best. Level 6, elite tier Sir Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. Sir Anthony Hopkins delivers one of the most psychologically terrifying performances ever put on film without raising his voice with his Hannibal Lecter portrayal in 1991's The Silence of the Lambs. He controls the screen with stillness, not movement. When Clarice first meets him, he stands perfectly centered with his arms at his sides. He uses minimal physicality to create maximum intimidation. His voice work is studied in film schools because every syllable he utters has intention. He uses a soft, cultured, almost polite tone which makes the wickedness underneath more terrifying. He builds psychological dominance in every interaction, with his eyes tracking Clarice's micro-reactions and pauses to inflict torture. He's inhumanly intelligent but never overdoes it, and his improvisation in detecting Jodie Foster's southern accent is a bullseye in method acting.
But you're not more than one generation from poor white trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you've tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What does your father do? Is he a coal miner? Does he stink of the land?
Hopkins is on screen for about 16 minutes, but he completely defines the entire film that made a whopping $272.7 million from a meager $19 million budget. Samuel L. Jackson as Jules Winfield in Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino announced indie cinema to the world stage with 1994's Pulp Fiction, which is synonymous with cult classic. The movie is pure chaos, but Tarantino manages to control the beast and deliver the finest films ever made. Samuel L. Jackson's Jules Winfield particularly stands out with his mastery of rhythm and timing in dialogue. The Ezekiel 25:17 monologue is a perfect example of this mastery as he starts calm, builds menace, pauses to let tension grow, and finishes with almost casual delivery. He is threatening, philosophical, and hypnotic at the same time with his timing. His micro-expressions and eye control are flawless as his eye contact dominates every scene. Tiny shifts like a raised eyebrow, subtle smirk, and a pause in blinking escalate tension without dialogue. He transforms a violent hitman into a fully realized, multi-dimensional character who's human, reflective, terrifying, and charismatic simultaneously.
What? Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. One more goddamn time.
Are only terrifying because of his delivery. Simply put, he elevates every scene he's in. This chaos only cost Tarantino $8 million, but returned $214 million on the box office, which speaks for itself. Ray Liotta as Henry Hill in Goodfellas. The elite tier would be incomplete without mentioning Ray Liotta's Henry Hill in 1990's Goodfellas. Liotta completely inhabited a morally complex character in Hill who's a man seduced by power and lifestyle. The casual delivery of violent acts like
I swear my fucking mother, if you touch her again, you're dead!
makes crime feel ordinary, which requires precise tonal control. He's a master of tonal shifts, as in the early scenes, Hill is charming as he laughs with friends and his girlfriend. During mid-scenes, his tone shifts to tense, almost paranoid, as betrayal or danger approaches. Later, his voice softens and he trembles during fear and despair as danger approaches. His chemistry with the cast, including Jimmy, Tommy, and Karen, is alive because of Liotta's responsiveness as he reacts to tension in others' performances rather than dominating the scene. He makes a mob boss humane with his balanced performance that made Goodfellas one of the greatest films ever made. Here, actors vanish into roles and rebuild themselves from scratch. They become one with their character and deliver a performance that transcends time and space. They're on the brink of perfection, but just not there. Level 7, GOAT tier. Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance in The Shining. Jack Nicholson delivers a performance of the century in 1980's The Shining. It is method acting personified. His pacing from start to end is a masterclass as Jack Torrance is charming and playful in early scenes, but midway he introduces micro-expressions of paranoia and frustration with clenched fists, darting eyes, and twitching lips. By the end, his descent into full psychosis feels organic and terrifying instead of cartoonish. His vocal mastery is exemplified in the "Here's Johnny" moment.
Here's Johnny!
Moment as he maximizes shock by manipulating tone and pace. I personally think Jack Nicholson is the master of micro-expressions because he uses facial expressions like no one else. In The Shining, he uses facial movements to convey deep psychological states. His eyes widen and dart to signal both internal plotting and fear. He smirks and raises eyebrows with subtle grimaces to communicate deranged humor and menace. Even in silence, his gaze portrays unhinged intent. The Shining is a case study for screen psychosis. Al Pacino as Tony Montana in Scarface. Narrowing down this level was tough, but I had no choice but to include Al Pacino here somewhere. His portrayal of Tony Montana in 1983's Scarface isn't acting. Pacino becomes Montana. He doesn't play a drug lord. He lives the psychological extremes of a man consumed by greed, paranoia, and pride. In early scenes, Tony is energetic and cocky as Pacino conveys charisma through posture and gestures. Midway, he shows subtle tension creeping in with his clenched fists and darting eyes. Finally, his mania explodes in physicality and vocal extremes. His performance tracks a complete emotional and moral arc, which is rare in gangster cinema. He's a macho man, yet his love for Elvira makes him awkwardly tender. He doesn't blow up the car, defying Sosa's orders because there's a kid in it.
You wanna play rough? Okay. Uno. Say hello to my little friend!
Famous lines like "the Ay Chico, they never lie" are monuments of Pacino's brilliant vocal delivery layered with pride, bravado, tension, desperation, and fragility. Of course, the film was a commercial success with $66 million in earnings against a $37 million budget. Liam Neeson as Oscar Schindler in Schindler's List. Closing off the GOAT tier level is 1993's Schindler's List, where Liam Neeson transformed a flawed man in Oscar Schindler into a moral hero. Schindler is a charming opportunist Nazi motivated by profit, charm, and social leverage. Early on, his humor dominates the screen as his posture is relaxed. Midway, micro-expressions of guilt and awareness creep in with fleeting grimaces, and later, he's fully committed to saving lives with his movements becoming measured and deliberate. Neeson masters emotional understatement. For instance, in the liquidation scenes, his eyes convey horror and disbelief while his voice remains calm. He witnesses the horrors of the camps in a quiet, human, and devastating manner. This restraint creates intense emotional realism. Since he must convince Nazis, Jews, and other collaborators to find a solution, his performance balances charm and negotiation, making Schindler persuasive without theatricality.
It's Hebrew from the Talmud. It says, whoever saves one life saves the world entire.
He makes the moral and emotional arc palpable without needing words, as a simple glance at his workers or brushing dirt off or weeping quietly when counting every life saved carries emotional weight. These are the roles that become cinematic legends as they change the course of film history. Perfection is never achieved in film, but these flicks reach closest to the sun without burning. Now it's your turn. Which performances do you think defined the 80s and 90s? Drop your picks in the comments, argue your case, and if you want more breakdowns like this, hit subscribe because we've got plenty more film analysis coming.